I guess this is my first development log. Uh, I have no programming experience. I have never made a game before, but I decided to try and learn some new skills and try making a game just for fun. Um, my plan is to make a Harvest Moon style game. I've got a lot of like interesting stuff in mind for like the story and whatnot, but that's all gonna be saved for last. For now, I'm just kind of learning how to do a lot of really basic things. Um, so in this first development log, I guess I'll just show what I have, which isn't a lot, but we've got a character, and they can move around in a scene. Um, Obviously, none of these are like finalized assets. It's just temporary placeholders mostly. I can walk, and if I hold down the space bar, I can run. Nope. I slide too much still. I gotta fix that. There's a couple of bugs still with how this works. Oop. Yeah, you just saw one of them. Okay, so if I'm walking and I hit spacebar and then I let go of spacebar, I'll walk, start to run, and then go back to walking, and that's pretty smooth. But if you hit the arrow key and the spacebar at the same time, you get this where you run but you don't speed up. And if you let go at the same time, you get stuck in essentially run mode, where it's still showing the run animation. So the single still frame is it's a state on the run animation tree, because they have a separate tree for running and for walking, and I'll explain why in a minute. But this means that I'm essentially still in run mode. I'm still showing my running tree, even though I should be showing the walking tree, because this is the not run state. It's just a single frame because you're not supposed to be able to see it. I can also move diagonally. Get us out of that stuck mode. And I can run and walk diagonally. So this is an almost working thing, but it's clearly still kind of janky. So I'm going to show the script I have. And if there's anyone watching this who has suggestions as for ways that I can make this better, feel free to leave that in the comments, because like I said, I have absolutely no programming experience, and I'm learning all of this just as someone who's never done any programming in their life. So I started out with a tutorial that I used to learn how to essentially just make a sprite that moves and animates in different directions. And then from there, I took a lot of what I learned from that tutorial to build out a little system of my own that I'll explain in a minute. But basically, the bugs have to do with this bit down here, which is something that I made up on my own. I didn't find any tutorials or anything necessarily that taught me how to do exactly what it was I was looking for, so I came up with something myself, and it does mostly work, but as you saw, it gets kind of glitchy if you release both keys at the same time, or if you press both keys at the same time. That's mainly the bug that we're dealing with. The sliding around is just a matter of variables that need to be adjusted still, but that's an easy fix. What I don't understand is why it is buggy if you press the buttons simultaneously or release them simultaneously. But basically, because I knew I was going to want to use larger sprites than normal, and there's sort of a limit to how big I can make my sprite sheets in Godot, I decided I would create some separate animations for different actions with separate sprite sheets, which may get to be a little bit much in the, like, this player scene is probably going to look pretty complicated when it's all done, but I don't mind that too terribly much. But basically it meant that I would have room to make bigger sprites with more detail. Now, I may actually shrink them down. In fact, I might end up ultimately shrinking them down enough that I don't need to do separate animations for separate things. I am practicing some sprite art and learning how to do pixel art. which is outside my normal wheelhouse. But who knows? Like, if I get good enough at that, I might actually end up scrapping this system. But for now, I want this to work just because I want to understand how it works. I want to learn. But basically, we have. Sorry. Give a second. Godot is a little bit laggy on my machine. We have a walk idle sprite and a running sprite. And so what happens is when you hit the shift key, it hides the walk idle and it shows the run. And when you let go of, not shift, space bar. Actually, something interesting I should point out is that originally I was tying this run action to the shift key, not the space bar. And it was working in all directions except the up diagonals, and I couldn't figure out why to save the life of me. And a friend of mine, he looked it over, and then he realized that the reason I was having that problem, that it was working in all directions except the up diagonals, had to do with, like, the way the keyboard is set up and, like, the sticky keys or whatever. And so all I had to do to fix that problem was have it switch to using the space bar for the run button instead of the shift key. And now that works fine. But that's not something I ever would have thought to try. To try, like, just mapping it to a different key and seeing if that fixed it is not something I would have ever thought of. But yeah, so we have the walk idle sprite and the run sprite. And Godot's lagging on me again. But basically, these sprites, both of them are technically always running at all times. They're both always working. And so when you hold the space bar, you hide one and you display the other. And then when you release, hides run and displays the walk idle. Now, there's a couple of bugs like you saw. It gets buggy when you hit the keys at the same time or release them at the same time. Also, if you're, like, holding the spacebar and then you move, I don't think that works at all, if memory serves correct. Like, I think if I hit the spacebar first before moving, I don't think that does anything. Yeah, that doesn't work at all. But in theory, it should. In theory, I should be able to hold the spacebar, then hit the arrow key, and then just break out into a run. But that doesn't really work. Not certain why. So that's worth noting. Any other bugs with this that I feel like I should mention? The fact that it doesn't work if you hit them at the same time, or if you release at the same time. Yeah. Yeah, releasing at the same time causes that bug. So, what seems to be happening is if you hit them at the same time or release them at the same time, it's not doing... So basically, when you hit spacebar, there's two things it's doing. It's hiding and showing, hiding, walk idle, showing run, and it's changing the speed with which you move. And then same thing, you release it, etc. And what's happening is that when you hit the keys at the same time or release them at the same time, it seems to not be doing all of the stuff that's in this little section. It's not doing, like, all three of these. And I'm not sure what is causing that. I don't know how to fix that yet. So yeah, that's my first update. If anyone has any suggestions as to how I could maybe do this function better, let me know. And I will put out another video when I have something else interesting to show.